Who we got on the line, Paulie?
Congressman Scalise.
Who? Who's this guy? Steve Scalise.
He's your buddy.
Can you hear me, my friend?
Rodney, how are you doing? Good morning.
Buddy, I am doing great. Hey, I can't believe, number one, they trusted me to guest host, and then I can't believe, number two, that you were able to call in this morning. But I am so thankful because you were here in Springfield on my behalf just last summer.
Yeah, we enjoyed getting out there, and I'm just surprised that they gave your own show. That I'm worried that your ratings would be so high you might think about leaving Congress. But we don't want to lose you in Congress. You're a dear friend. Happy to go see you in Springfield. Be happy to come back anytime.
Well, thank you, buddy. Thank you very, very much. And you know why we were there? We talked a lot about the experience you went through, surviving, being shot at that baseball practice that you and I were enjoying that morning. But you got a new book out that actually goes through your version of events and what you saw, what you heard before and after, and your amazing recovery. Why don't you tell the listeners a little bit about your book, and then I'm going to tell them where to get it.
Okay, thanks, Rodney. Yeah, the book's called Back in the Game, and kind of literally it talks about the story of how I was able to get back in the game and what I went through. You were there on the field that morning, horrible tragedy. I think if anybody told you that you had a situation where a gunman came out to a baseball practice with the intention of killing all the Republicans on that field. He had the element of surprise and semi-automatic weapon with unlimited rounds. If people told you that everybody was alive at the end except the shooter, it'd be hard for you to believe. And yet that is what happened. And the book Back in the Game really talks about how it happened and the heroes that were involved and the miracles that were involved, because there was a lot of both. There were true heroes like David Bailey and Crystal Griner, like our colleague Brad Wenstrup from Ohio.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be alive today, and maybe a lot of us wouldn't be, if not for their heroism and bravery. And then the true miracles that happened on that field that after people look at it, they go, wow, there was definitely a presence of God that got us all through that day.
There was. It was strangely peaceful during and even after for us who were there. But I could not imagine. But I enjoyed reading the book, and I read it on one flight out to D.C. from Chicago, Illinois. And it was a very easy read, but it was interesting hearing your perspective, because your perspective is obviously much different than mine, even though we were only a few feet away from each other that morning. But to hear your perspective on the recovery, and anybody who knows Steve knows this guy is one of the strongest guys I've ever met. And to see where he was laying on that field that morning and to see where he is today, you were moving around amazingly. And you gave me a bit of advice one time. You said, man, I never knew how much you used your gluteus muscles until you get shot in your butt.
It's true. And it's amazing when, I had to totally relearn how to walk. There were times in the first few days I didn't even know if I was going to live.
Yep.
And then as I was starting to kind of realize how deep the internal damage was to me from the gunshot wound, they weren't sure if I was going to be able to walk again. And so to go through that process and to have to go through physical therapy, intensive physical therapy, just learn how to stand and keep your balance. And then, to learn all the muscles, the nerves that are involved in just a daily activity like tying your shoe or reaching over for something, from the counter. It's, it was a grueling process, but it was rewarding in so many ways. And, of course, Jennifer and the kids were there with me at the hospital for those first few months. And, and then the prayers, the warmth of people. I know you, Rodney, told me of just people in your district that I had never met before that told you that they were praying for me, and that kind of support gave me incredible strength during the really tough times.
Well, somebody asked me one time, what was your most inspiring moment in Congress? And it wasn't any bill I passed. It wasn't even my swearing in. It was when you walked back out onto that floor and gave that speech. I don't know. I actually tried to stalk you. I saw you out in the speakers lobby, and then I followed you back in. But just to see that moment when you were able to come back from what many of us that morning thought would never happen was inspiring to me, and it's inspiring to the nation, Steve. And your recovery at the same time was with you were able to have the folks who saved us all. You mentioned them earlier, David Bailey and Crystal Griner, who were there that morning. And I remember harassing them that morning, asking about, what time they had to pick up Mr. Daisy, but little did I know how important they would be to all of us. And David was right by your side while you were recovering, and Crystal, who was shot and her ankle shattered, was recovering at the same time. But you kept in contact with him during your recovery too, right?
I really did. And, the United States Capitol Police do an incredible job, just like all of our law enforcement. And they come under their own intense scrutiny and fire unfairly in a lot of ways just for doing their job. And, in my case, I've got 2 Capitol Police officers who are with me in my day-to-day routine, just by the nature of being in a leadership position in the House. And a lot of people wondered, including myself, is that necessary? I even wrote about that in the book, that people would make fun of me back home when I'd go to a coffee shop and I'd have these guys with the earpieces. They thought they were Secret Service. And yet if they weren't there with me that day, many people believe that a lot of us wouldn't be here because it would have been a massacre. And they were both shot during the shootout and both kept at it, David and Crystal, and they were joined by the Virginia police and ultimately took the shooter down even after being shot themselves. And so
they did.
Crystal was in the emergency bay right next to me. She was taken to the same hospital I was, and she, her recovery from the immediate aftermath was quicker, but she had severe damage. Like you said, the bullet, it was a .762 caliber rifle bullet, which is massive. You could take a big bear down with that. And, and we both had severe injuries, but she had serious leg damage. But both of them came back to work. And that was inspiring to me to see them every day. They come visit me in the hospital, and Crystal would be doing her rehabilitation, and I'd see her, and she'd push me, and I'd push her, and, just to be able to see them come back on the job. It's a warm feeling. You form a true kindred brotherhood, and I think all of us on that ball field that they have a more special relationship than even before.
Well, I know they're your heroes. They're my heroes too. I followed David off the field that day. That's how I was able to get off the field, because of his courage to come and fire at the shooter on the field. And unfortunately, I saw Crystal's ankle get shot that morning. And to know they're both recovering well, and to see David with you on a regular basis, it's just inspiring to us all, as are you, Steve. And I know we're running out of time, my friend, but I did want to get into some issues, but I don't think we have the time. But thank you for sharing your story with Springfield. Thanks for all you do, buddy. But most importantly, Steve, thanks for being my good friend.
Rodney, thank you. I appreciate what you do, what you fight for, and just your values. And I appreciate our friendship as well. So thanks for having me on for a few minutes, Rodney.
Thanks, my friend. Take care, buddy.